So over here we've got our raised bed that we made, and you can see, and I'll zoom in here for you, that most of our tomato plants are coming up. Most of our bean plants are coming up. They're already leafing out. I mean, this is a lot of progress for these. This is day 4. The close-up shots that I'm showing you are day 3. So definitely some quick sprouting going on in our raised bed. We don't have a lot of compost that's been on the property for 6 months to a year. So I'm using materials that we would put in our composting pile that we could also put directly into the soil to make the soil richer right now while we're trying to grow. All right, so today we're going to be planting some seeds. This is kind of a bit of an invention here, and I'm going to post it in a separate video right here, but basically this is a pot of soil that is self-watering. The theory is that the water that is in this tank below will evaporate and slowly continue to keep the soil nice and moist, which will help germinate our seeds. So far it's pretty moist. There's a lot of rock in the soil because we just took soil off of our land. It's not any special potting soil or anything like that. We're not going to be putting carrots or anything in this soil that needs room to expand, but we are going to be planting, I think we've got here some tomatoes and green beans. So there'll be some trellises sitting in here. We're gonna put some tomatoes and green beans in here. We wanna give ourselves the best shot at success that we can. And green beans, they can generally grow almost any time of year. They're kind of a reproducing plant. So to get started here, I just kind of messed the dirt up a little bit with my fingers on top to give the seeds somewhere to kind of fall into the dirt. I am going to put probably my green beans on this side. The sun generally stays on that side, and I think the green beans will end up overgrowing what our tomatoes grow. And we're really just gonna kind of loosely cover these. We're not gonna bury the green beans too much. I'll show you why in a minute. And I'm gonna put our tomatoes over on this side over here. The next thing I'm gonna show you, because this is important to know, and I'm a little hungry here, but we need some sort of fertilizer to put into the soil because our soil is just dug up from the ground. We don't really have any fertilizer, but I like bananas. So I'm just gonna take some pieces of banana, drop them in there. I also brought with me our compost bucket, and I'm gonna go through the compost bucket and I'm gonna find things I think could help this soil, even though it hasn't had time to fully compost. What you got there, buddy?
I got a beetle that I don't even know, and I caught it all by myself.
Wow, let me see. Let me zoom in on that thing there.
See it?
Yeah, let's see.
It's like a beetle.
It's not like a beetle. I think it is a beetle. Look at that thing. He is huge. Good job. This is stuff for our compost pile. There are eggshells in here, and eggshells are full of nutrients, especially when you're starting a garden. If you have chickens, so you have some extra eggs to waste, you could actually put a full egg in the soil, and you know, there's some coffee grounds on those. I'm not too worried about the coffee grounds because coffee grounds are also good for this stuff. You know, there are some people who will actually plant their seeds inside the egg because it's got so many nutrients and nitrogen and just natural fertilizers for your soil that it's just a great thing to have in your soil. And we're really kind of mixing this in. But if you have chickens and you're producing more eggs than you can eat, this is another way you can use your eggs. Just take the whole egg, go out and bury them in your garden, and let them decompose. They'll start putting some nutrients in that soil, and it's 100% free if you have chickens. I mean, the whole egg is good. The shell is really good. So even, you know, save your shells. A lot of people put these in their compost pile. Here's another banana. Throw that in there. If you're starting to compost, so you don't have completely composted materials yet, what you might want to do is have a separate pile that you put some of this stuff that you can use right away in, like banana peels, eggshells, because you could throw that right into your potting soil mix and it'll start working for you. It'll start doing the job for you. So now we've got some compost in here. I've been experimenting a little bit with kind of active composting. If you watched my video on growing sweet potatoes, I'm actually growing some sweet potatoes in fill dirt and recycled metal, and I mixed in some manure with it. None of this stuff has sat in a compost pile for a year. It's just, I'm taking it straight as it is and putting it back to use again. Now there is something that has been composting for some time. If you watch our Reconstructing Spirit Hills series, you'll know that our house was completely overgrown when we bought it. We had trees coming up everywhere close to the house. We had to clear them all, but we had them mulch the trees on site and into just big piles everywhere randomly. I went to one of the piles this morning and I dug up from the bottom of that mulch. I tried to get some that had been broken down as much as possible, and that's what I'm gonna fill this last, inch layer here with, is just some mulch from our pile. Now the theory behind this tub of mine, it's based on natural earth hydrology. The plant would normally reach down and pull water from water below the soil surface, and because a lot of plants can't reach that far, so they'll depend on precipitation. The way that this is designed is to work off of evaporation. There's a term, evapotranspiration, which is where the plants also help evaporate the water as well. So as it rains, this continues to fill up, and that way the water has to evaporate up through the soil, keeping the soil moist. If you watch my video on how this was built, we have a system for making sure that our water level in here doesn't get too high and rot out our plants, but we have it just high enough that it's touching the bottom of the soil so those plants can pull that water up through their roots just as they normally would. Now this valve right here is designed so that as water fills up to this level, the water will find the path of least resistance and come out. It's an experiment. Follow our channel and we'll find out if these things grow and how well they actually do and how much they produce. So out here we've been kind of tilling this up. We're not going to get this to the point of a full garden this year. I think we really are going to have to continue cultivating it through the fall and into the winter to let some of the things here break down. We also have a lot of rocks in here, so we may end up having to bring in a little bit of soil on top of this, or at least spread some of our wood chips and mulch from other parts of the property over this section. But it's summertime and melons generally grow pretty well, or those type of plants during the summertime. So we are gonna try and plant a few things here. We're gonna plant some corn. I don't know how well the corn's gonna do at this point in the year, but we'll give it a shot. We do have some cantaloupe. We have some green onion. We have some watermelon. And then what else are we planting?
Pumpkins.
Pumpkins, that's right.
We're gonna make a pumpkin patch so we could get pumpkins. That's okay if you guys come to the pumpkin patch.
Yeah, you guys can come to the pumpkin patch. All right, so we're basically gonna plant these in the ground. My grandfather had a farm up in Vermont, and I don't know how the guy did it. He had a green thumb, but he would just grow all sorts of stuff in his yard. it can be done. It's just, it takes a lot of work. I've kind of laid these out in an area where I know where these plants are going to be, so we can hand cultivate around it and keep the weeds out. Weeds are already starting to grow up in here from last week. But Ben, why don't you grab your sword and
Okay, fine.
go down in a row and make me some holes.
Make you some holes, okay.
Yep.
Lines too? Can I make you lines?
Actually, with this one, go ahead and just draw a straight line right down there, like this. Take this and go. Just do that all the way down the dirt here. Now, one thing I've learned with seeds is you don't necessarily want to plant them too deep. The cantaloupe, I'm actually planting in a very moist area. I've been kind of watching this as the rain comes down and where areas collect water the most. And I want my melons to be able to get plenty of water. Ben, that's not straight.
Well, I want to do a ton.
So this is an area in the soil where it does retain a little bit of water, which is good for my purposes here. Now, this soil isn't very nutrient rich. It does have a lot of decomposed weeds and stuff in it, but it also has a lot of rocks.
I went to stop with it. This.
You can stop there, and then on the next one, start going long ways like that again. So we're gonna kind of create some of our own natural fertilizer to help these seeds get going. And I'm just using some stuff from our compost, crushed eggshells. They do a lot for the soil. Another thing that I noticed that we have over here is because I like to burn off the land as I'm clearing it, there's actually some reminiscence of burn piles. So, and that's good news, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of the charred burn piles and cover these seedlings with it. Here you see I've got some real dark, just burnt matter here. Leftover ash. Let's spread that in here. Our dirt that's full of burnt, ashy stuff.
Ashy, like ashy, ashy.
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 Birds and whatnot. Okay, that's probably enough for there. Up and coming.
You see? If you didn't see it, because Daddy accidentally put this too close, but still see it. Can you still see it? No. Okay. Pointing right at it. Okay.
We're not seeing a whole lot of life here. Our other planter started seeding out really within 2 to 3 days. We started seeing growth. Out here it's day 4. We're finally starting to see some sprouts come up. I think most of the plants that we put in the ground here will do fine. It's also June, so if you look at the soil around here, it hasn't rained for a couple days. It gets real dry and crackly, but then when it rains, it gets really soggy and wet and muddy for a couple days. So it's really kind of a difficult thing to work with, and until we get this whole thing leveled out and we get our drainage ditches the way we want it to, we're not gonna have the soil working the way that we want it to. But I'm hoping that we put some corn in here, some cantaloupes, some watermelons, some pumpkins, and some onion. All of those things should do fairly well this time of year.